Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Well, hey, good morning. How you doing? Mr. Beaver is with us. He's just having a slight technical issue at the moment, so he asked me to start things off. So here we are. It's a beautiful Monday morning. I don't know what it's like out. I haven't even looked out the window, to be honest with you. It is a Monday morning, though, and we are going to start this day off right. I hope. I certainly plan to. I have a full mug of coffee, and I'm ready to roll. We do have a special guest joining us. He's in the green room. We're just going to wait for Mr. Beaver to come back. I am excited about today because we featured some of his content on this past Friday's show. And this gentleman sums it up very, very nicely. And I was in complete agreement with what he had to say about Mr. Blaine Higgs. But before we get to that, I need to thank our sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, CanadianTarot.com, and the Peppermaster, because they've been with us since before we even started on the air. They've been our title sponsors from day one, and we're really happy to continue working with those fine folks because they are lovely. So Mr. Beaver, I see, has joined us in the green room, and I think it's okay to start. Give me a thumbs up if you're good to go, sir. He's good to go. Here we are.
All right. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to Season 3 and Episode 290 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crier Media Network. Yeah. Today,
Spirit fingers.
Today, recording day is Monday, January 8th, 2024. I remembered this time. And it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas 2025 here at the Beaver
It
Lodge.
actually, there's a ton of snow out there, and I think we're getting, we got about 10 centimeters already, and I think we're getting another 10 to 20 on Wednesday, Tuesday, and then I think freezing rain on Thursday. So it's an Ottawa winter.
In earnest. Over here as well, we're going to be getting a little rain, but apparently all this week here at the Beaver Lodge, it's going to be 0 or higher. So I'm not sure how long the snow is going to stay. Again.
This is really putting a crimp in my ski season, I can tell you that.
Really, right? Oh, man. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, hey. And with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. Sorry for the late start. Tech was super temperamental. Pages wouldn't load, email wouldn't send, and then when the show started, I was hearing double. But I think we've got it all figured out. So
better than seeing double, though, I guess?
Not seeing double, fortunately. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing. Ooh, you were moving there. And CanadianTarot.com. We have a very, very special show for you, as Mr. Grizzly was telling you, because we have a wonderful guest with us today. But before we bring him in, Mr. Grizzly, how is your mental health today, sir?
So here's the funny thing. I woke up at 2 a.m. and didn't get back to sleep till 5, which is why I sent you all the information later than normal, because I crawled out of bed at 6:30. I slept from, I woke up again at 6 and then just kept hitting snooze for 30 minutes. So I should probably feel terrible emotionally and mentally, but oddly enough, I'm in a super great mood. My stomach's off and I got a splitting headache, but I'm in a great mood. So I'll take it. I'll take it and I'll run with it. I'm not going to question it. It is what it is. And it's working for me this morning. So I'm just going to run with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Run with it. Don't question it if you're feeling good. Good morning to you all, the best damn fam in all podcasting. Kit, Dan, Kit, Elaine, Kit, Kendra, Kit, Ellen. Lovely to see you this morning. Kit, Freddy, with the very, very interesting handle. An interesting handle actually has levels here. But
we're not going to say it, but we'll probably use that term at some point today.
Kit Mohan is here. Good morning to you, Kit Linda M. Kit Bruce, hey, nice to see you, Mabuhay. Let's see, Kit Hugh as well has been joining us. Lovely morning to you, sir. Plus, we have Kit Obsessive Audio is with us as well. Good morning. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. And Kit Jen, hello, dear. It's been a while since we've seen you here in the morning. So lovely to have you back. I hope everything's going well. We've missed you, and you have been missed. Also by the damn fam as well, as we can see by the chat. Good morning, Kit Cassie, Kit Donna, and Kit Saucy. Thank you all for joining us today. We, as we mentioned, have a guest. A gentleman from New Brunswick. Now, we are going to be paying special attention to New Brunswick this year because there is a general election in the province this October. And it is, so far, there's going to be 3 general elections this year, one in Saskatchewan, one in British Columbia, and one in New Brunswick. But this is the one that's going to capture our attention because it's the one where there's the greatest possibility or likelihood of a government flipping.
Yeah, we think so.
Yes. So we will be paying a lot of attention to New Brunswick this year, Kits and Cubs. And this person is a satire writer for the Manatee magazine, a publication that you should definitely support.
Absolutely.
Yes. And pretty much that's all he told us he wants us to mention in the bio, but he's here.
Which is fair.
Not to talk about anything satire. Today, it's going to be a very, very, very serious subject. As you know, Kits and Cubs, we've been talking a lot on our show about Premier Blaine Higgs. His political fortunes have not been quite good in the last while, and it seems that he believes that his road to maintaining power is going through a negative obsession with trans youth. It's almost ground zero for this movement in Canada. And then, of course, Premier Scott Moe decided to hold his keg and actually invoke the notwithstanding clause. And then other premiers started dabbling in that, some going all the way and some deciding maybe I shouldn't go there as much. And we even have the leader of the opposition federally, as indicated in his year-end interviews, even dabbling in that subject. So it seems that hating on some of the most vulnerable, the Canadian conservative political movement seems to believe is their path to success. So,
pretty terrible path, if you ask me.
A very serious subject today, but we have a guest who's very, very, very well placed to be able to discuss this, and not only because he lives in New Brunswick. So, yes. So, Kits and Cubs, please put your paws up and give a big round of applause for Mr. Sean Rouse. Welcome to the Beaver Lodge, sir.
Well, thank you. That's so kind of you guys. It's great to be here.
It's lovely to have you. And what a nice voice you have.
Yeah, we got to have you on more often. You've got a good podcasting voice, sir.
Thanks.
You just fit right in. It's smooth and calm, and I love it.
Oh, that's nice of you. Thanks.
All right. Sean, maybe
I kind of went off on Friday after reading your
did you? I didn't get to hear the show, unfortunately, but
yeah, that's okay. I went off. and I kind of sprung it on Mr. Beaver. He didn't know I was going to do that. He says, "Do you have anything else?" I said, "Actually, I do." And it was it Friday or
It
Thursday?
was
I can't
Friday.
remember.
It was
It was
Friday.
Friday.
Yeah.
And I tore into Blaine Higgs after reading. I read. I narrated your thread, and it was a punch to the gut from Mr. Beaver. It made me incredibly angry.
And it made me cry.
Yeah, yeah. It was a real punch to the gut for him. Me, I got aggro. It's like I want to go talk to Mr. Higgs myself and
Yeah.
get up in his grill, as the kids say,
This is how I feel.
because what he is doing is horrible.
Right.
Horrible.
I was, as I mentioned in the intro, you are particularly well placed to be discussing this issue, and I didn't want to speak for you on this issue. So maybe we could start there. How do you come to this issue? And it's not simply because you're a resident of New Brunswick.
No, no. So I have a trans child. So way back in late April, May, we heard that Policy 713 was coming under revision in New Brunswick. My wife said, "This is terrible what they're doing to Policy 713." I said, "What is Policy 713? I never heard of it." And what I came to learn very quickly was it is a policy that is in New Brunswick schools that supports to us LGBTQIA plus students. So it specifies they can have a welcoming learning environment. It outlines rules around sports teams, make sure trans kids can play on the team to which they identify. Um, talks about universal bathrooms. It talks about they could be members of a GSA and not, and which is a gay straight alliance or a gender and sexuality alliance, some people call them. So, and not have someone tell their parents that they're part of that club, which is important. Some students have to keep that from their parents for reasons we'll talk about, I'm sure. And it talked about use of pronouns and preferred names at school. So in the case of students who are over 16, they get to choose what pronouns and preferred name they want to use at school. And the school must respect it according to the policy. For children under 16, even in the old policy, they needed parental permission to have a name change for official record keeping. If you wanted to have a change in the school systems, the team roster, the cast list. And I don't know if you guys know about Microsoft Teams, but it's like a collaboration tool that they use in the classroom.
Yeah, I use it every day.
Exactly. So it has your name, it has your name right there. So if you want that name to be your preferred name, you needed parental sign off. The old policy said, if for some reason you can't get that parental sign off, we'll accommodate you the best we can. And anyway, so what they started to do was say, this policy is not necessary. These children are already protected by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, so they don't need a special policy to protect them at school. And I knew personally from my own experience with my child to use, the universal bathrooms every day, who had a preferred name and pronoun. Even though they had my permission, they have many friends who, some of them have parents who support them, and sadly, some of those parents don't support their kids. So we knew it was important, and so I started to. I'd always been, as a satire writer, you mentioned my satire that I write. I'd always watch politics, but hadn't really, gotten off the sidelines as an activist, so to speak, until this really came under attack. So that's when we really started pushing back as hard as we could, because we knew this policy was crucial. Where the government landed was they took away that informal accommodation where the school would support them the best they can. They took out the language around genders, students who are able to participate on sports teams that they identify with, and settled on language that was a little more vague. Most people didn't object to that, but taking away those informal accommodations for students in unsupportive homes was really where people pushed back hard, and rightly so, in my opinion.
Now, I'm looking here at Wikipedia, and it says that the policy was enacted in 2020. Was that under the previous government or under the current one?
No, under the same government, and there's quite a history around this. So the former education minister, who has now left the government, not just the cabinet, not just the caucus, he's now, or not just the cabinet, I should say. He's not in the caucus anymore. He's still a member of the legislature, but he left the party and the cabinet over this. So he would have been working with deputy ministers and education professionals in the education department in New Brunswick to implement this a policy that supports SOGI, or sexual orientation and gender identity, or 2S LGBTQIA plus students, and kept sending it to the Premier's office. Blaine Higgs was elected in 2018 as Premier. And this Mr. Dominic Carty, as his name, would have come in with that government as a Conservative, and he's former, actually, NDP leader here in New Brunswick, but jumped over to the Conservatives, and very capable guy, would have worked with the professionals and brought this policy to the government, and just kept sending it over, and no answer. It didn't come back. And the way this works, I guess, with them is any of these policy changes they send over to the Premier's office. The Premier signs off on them, and if the Premier's okay, they come back and they get approved. Well, this one just didn't come back for whatever reason, and Mr. Carty and the deputy minister in question, George Daly, kept going into, to the Premier's office saying, what's the latest on this? And, we have questions. I'm not sure about this. And eventually in 2020, Mr. Carty signed the policy and said, this is, I'm done waiting for Higgs to sign off on this. I'm just going to sign the policy. And Higgs did not like it. He tore a strip off of Mr. Carty and brought it to his caucus, and caucus kind of shrugged and said, Mr. Carty's making some good arguments for this. I don't know why this would be a problem. So it passed, and it sat there for 2 years. Eventually, Mr. Carty left the cabinet for other reasons. There was a controversy over French immersion in New Brunswick, which is language politics is always a big deal in New Brunswick, where 1/3 of the province speaks French as their mother tongue. And Mr. Higgs had proposed to throw out the French immersion program that has been in place for over 40 years. That I myself
in Canada's only officially bilingual province.
Right. Yeah. I myself took the program. I speak pretty good French as a result. 40 years later, 30 years later, whatever. And I thought it was good. A lot of people support the program, and there was a famous meeting where Higgs was, and this was outlined by the deputy minister and subsequently Mr. Carty as the former minister, where Higgs just said, I don't care what data you're showing me about the program. Data my ass was the big quote that people, it's become an infamous phrase in New Brunswick, where Higgs says, data my ass, you guys are going to say whatever you want because you like the program as it is, and I want to get rid of it. Mr. Higgs has had a long history, actually, as part of a splinter right-wing group in his youth. The Core Party proposed getting rid of French as one of the official languages of the province, and no longer being an officially bilingual province. So,
that was Richard Hatfield that brought in the bilingualism, correct?
Back in those days, yes, and it was Louis J. Robichaud and Richard Hatfield, and there's a long, very interesting history about how that came to be in New Brunswick. But long story short, official bilingualism is constitutionally entrenched, and it's a core value of most New Brunswickers. So Anyways, Mr. Carty subsequently left the cabinet and over this, and deputy ministers left, like George Daly, and all of this stuff about Policy 713 came out because they're no longer constrained. There's still some things that Mr. Carty won't talk about and Mr. Daly won't talk about, but everything that's not part of Cabinet Confidentially came to light as, how Mr. Higgs thinks about this policy and to us LGBTQIA plus people in particular, and has never supported this policy or supported, frankly thought it wasn't necessary and tried to get rid of it. And, the things he started talking about right away, and this is, he settled on this line about parental rights, and I think most people might have heard that or seen that in the paper. That's not what he said at first. What he said at first was, the problem with this policy is that it's affecting the sex ed curriculum, and it's indoctrinating students, and there's drag queens in the classrooms who are doing inappropriate things in front of students, and children are on sports teams that can't compete fairly because there's trans kids on there who are more, trans women are on teams with cis women, and they can't compete against the trans women. No complaints have ever been filed saying this in
course not.
any of the high school sports. I think there's 29 high school sports that the NBIAA oversees. No complaints ever received. So he's just pulling this stuff out of thin air, right? The thing that really angered me was when the education minister said that the policy needed to be reviewed because we needed to see how New Brunswickers felt about their daughters being in the bathroom with trans people. If you can imagine, in 2023, saying that out loud into a microphone on the air on CBC.
It's just so ridiculous.
One of the most damaging tropes about
Mhm.
2S LGBTQIA plus people in the world is that, you're not safe with them in intimate situations. And this is just, going right at that as hard as possible. We actually filed a human rights complaint with the New Brunswick Human Rights Commission over those comments that they had made. Eventually, they settled on this notion of parental rights. That's something that's popular in the States. It's politically acceptable to most people. It doesn't create those kind of outrageous, tropes that he had been speaking about, and that's something that he could speak about and say over and over again in the newspaper without getting pilloried, I guess. So that's where it ended up. By the middle of June, there was a controversy with the government where they proposed the opposition had proposed a motion to roll this back to the original policy 713, which restored those informal accommodations for people. And through a little bit of language that they had inserted into that, they agreed there was enough support from Higgs's own government. People split with the party, and some cabinet ministers subsequently left the government, actually, to send this to the Child and Youth Advocate in New Brunswick, who did a spectacular report. It's almost 100 pages long, just where they collected evidence from medical professionals, child psychologists, the Brunswick Medical Society, legal scholars from all the maritime law schools, where they said, changing these informal accommodations is a clear violation of both the child's charter rights, privacy rights, and under the, violation of the New Brunswick Human Rights Act. So all the information that the government needed to say, oh no, this was a big mistake. Nope. Still did not change
Data my
course
ass,
at
basically.
all. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now Higgs has doubled down. This has a sort of happy ending from the perspective of the school districts. So the school districts in New Brunswick, there's 7 of them, refused to enforce the policy changes. They said, of course we're not going to, and there is language in the Education Act, a small clause that lets them override, or the language is actually enhance or further develop a policy from the Education Department. So it has to build upon a policy that's already in place from the Education Department to be legal. And they use that clause to say, well, we're going to enhance what they roll back and restore the original policy. So even though Higgs passed this policy, all of the school districts refused to enforce it. And that's where it stands right now. It was to be in place for 2023, the beginning of the school year. They pushed quite hard in the districts. The districts, to their credit, didn't crack. They got their own lawyers paid for by the province, if you can believe that, as ridiculous as that is. They have access to government-funded lawyers to fight the government on this policy, and took advantage of that. And their legal advice was, of course you can't violate a child's human rights or have a policy that does that. So your clauses are legal. And this is now there's a group called Equality New Brunswick. They're mounting a charter challenge against this. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association is also mounting a charter challenge against this. And of course, as we said, the districts are refusing to enforce this. So the government's been nowhere on this, despite all of their efforts. Thank goodness all these professionals and advocates for children showed up to stick up for this small minority of kids that are being trampled over.
Okay, my mind is blown right now, because right now, with everything that you said, there's like content for 4 different shows.
Yes.
We have,
Oh, yeah.
first of all, the leader of the NDP jumping to the Conservatives. What
Yeah.
the hell?
Oh,
How does that happen?
It's a long story.
Well,
he's quite a guy. He's a great guy. He's a very smart individual. Is well thought of in New Brunswick, and I mean, New Brunswick's a small place, as you know. It's not that uncommon to see folks jump around, I guess. But
Okay.
Well, there is a big difference between the NDP and the Progressive Conservative Party in New Brunswick, as opposed to Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, where the NDP is effectively the Progressive Conservative Party of, Joe Clark under the NDP banner. Whereas down east, it's a different story. It's more in line with Ed Broadbent's NDP.
Yeah, I think Mr. Carty considers himself a centrist and ended up leaving the party, getting evicted almost from the party for being too centrist and not left-wing enough. So instead of jumping over to the Liberals, where I think he probably fits in better, in my opinion, but he found a home with the Tories as a progressive. And it's not, the capital C Conservatives here in New Brunswick. We've always had a very progressive Conservative party, in the tradition of Joe Clark. And red Tories are well known here. We've never had this firebrand, hardcore Alberta Conservatives here in New Brunswick until lately.
Okay.
I've lived in New Brunswick.
Oh, okay.
I have a lot of family in New Brunswick. My mother is from New Brunswick, from Miramichi.
Okay.
So I understand. I get it. I've lived in Miramichi. I've lived in St. Margaret's. I've spent almost every summer of my life there up until a certain age. So I get it. I've traveled throughout the province, lived in Newfoundland. Like, I get, Maritimer and a Newfoundlander. But I've been in Ottawa for about 40 years now. But I do understand. And when you say it is a small C Conservative, and it always has been in New Brunswick, it's always been a very progressive province. It doesn't necessarily get the spotlight that it should get because, it's 700,000 people, I think?
It's increased lately. It's up to 840,000 now-ish.
Yeah, so you're pushing towards 1 million, because Nova Scotia crossed the 1 million mark this past summer. So
exactly,
we'll see 1 million people there soon enough. Now we got to get you guys a CFL team.
I know a lot of people who would love that and who would drive the 4 hours to Halifax to see a
Oh
game in
yeah.
a heartbeat. So,
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, Halifax or even Moncton looked at it for a little while
yeah,
because it's got
it's in centrally
right.
located. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't want to take us too
Okay.
far off topic, but
So okay. So first we have the former Minister of Education. Then we have the whole core movement. For viewers that are not watching, was a party that was called Confederation of Regions that I believe was dissolved.
It
And
was. They would have imploded. And there was another party called the People's Alliance that was absorbed into Higgs's government by Higgs. In the past couple of years, they were a splinter party, and it's the same, not as ardently anti-bilingualism as the core party was, but definitely blew the dog whistle of anti-French rhetoric a lot and ended up with enough support. There's always that between 5 and 10%, let's say, who's might be on the fringe, right? Who thinks they can't get a good job because they don't speak French. And this is New Brunswick. This is a look into New Brunswick politics. There's a subset of the public service where you have to be bilingual because you serve both French and English constituents. And some people have said, well, that's not fair. I don't speak French, so why should I be excluded? Most French people, like 80%, speak English, right? So, we expect the French people to learn English, but not the English
but
people to
not the
learn
other way around.
French.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little hard to swallow for most people, but within that fringe, that's animates them
Well,
for sure.
it's been my experience too, and you might be able to corroborate this, that many of the folks go, well, I can't get a job in the government because I don't speak French. Yeah, but you're also not qualified.
Yeah.
Forget about the French speaking part.
Well,
You don't have the education or the skill set to have that job.
well,
So
the trope would be some people only get the job because they speak both languages, and they're not qualified, and more qualified English people are being passed over in favor of bilingual people. Just anything you can think of, right? And again, this is the fringe. This is not the mainstream, but it animated enough to bring core to power in the late 90s, and
they even got a few seats, didn't they, along the way?
they absolutely did. Yeah. Yeah. They were the official opposition at one point, actually. And, recently we did see that rear its head again with the People's Alliance. Now, Higgs, there's people say, I won't even work with this People's Alliance party because they are blowing that anti-French dog whistle. I don't want to be associated with them at all.
But he will.
Higgs didn't have that problem. He brought in there was two members of the Legislative Assembly, or MLAs, that we call them in New Brunswick, who he brought in, and that party dissolved as a result, including their leader, who's now the public safety minister.
Oh, my word.
Yep. And there's
Yikes.
if you look up Chris Austin, look up my manatee stories on Chris Austin. He was a target of my satire, and deservedly so in my view. But if you want to see, if you want to get to know Chris Austin, go to themanatee.net and search for him, and you'll see some satire about him. There's usually a kernel of truth, and we build out from there.
Of course.
Oh, my word.
Let's
Okay,
revisit something
hold
here
on.
for a second, if we may. The entire aspect of parental rights. Okay. Which is a crock of shit, to be quite honest with you. And here's why I want to revisit it. In the state of Ohio recently, let me just put this on the screen. I'll read it out for the kits that are listening to the audio-only version. The right went from concerns for trans children to outright banning gender-affirming care for adults in Ohio. It was never about protecting children.
Of course.
They don't want any trans people to exist.
So this is the thing, right? So if you talk to Blaine Higgs, he would say, and he thinks this is his winning line, that, he stumbled into after 3 or 4 weeks. We reviewed that, of all this terrible tropes that he promoted, and then settled on the line of, we need to support parents. Well, of course, everyone supports parents. No one is saying we don't support parents or we want to take rights away from parents or anything like that. There was a survey done of trans youth in New Brunswick, or not New Brunswick, in Canada. I think it was in 2019, so recently, where they surveyed youth, and it was almost 1,000 trans and gender diverse youth who responded. And they asked them a number of questions, and what they found was about half of the trans youth came out to their parents, and their parents did not support them. They found 78% of the trans youth who came out to their parents, even if their parents supported them, they would not support a gender affirming name for them. So, I guess the line that Higgs has been promoting as a defense to what he's done is that this is and actually said teachers are hiding information from parents, that students are hiding this information, teachers are hiding information from parents, and the parents don't know that their child has gender dysphoria and wants to use a preferred name and pronoun. So since this is being hidden, we can't allow that, because parents are parents and parents need to support their children. So we need to tell, these parents need to be informed, so this child can't have that informal accommodation of using a preferred name if their parent doesn't sign off. And remember, that only happens, they can only get that accommodation from a teacher, maybe. It's not going to be in Microsoft Teams or the team roster or their roll call. It's only, I can maybe get the teacher to call me this preferred name if my parents won't support me. And that's what Higgs took away. So in any case, I guess, sorry, I forgot where I was going with this.
That's okay. It's
All
okay.
right.
It happens.
No worries.
I get so animated about this. So
Understandably.
Let me put the question to you this way. If they're talking about parental rights, clearly they're not talking about all parents because you're a parent. What
of
about
course,
your rights?
exactly. So
Yes.
of course, that's where I was going with this story. So with parental rights, of course, no one is saying that parents shouldn't be involved. And of course, parents should support their children and be aware. And in a lot of cases, parents are aware and decline to support their children. And I know people like this through my own children who will not support their child using a different name or using a different gender, let the child cut their hair to or grow their hair, as the case may be, and uses all of their parental power, so to speak, to restrict that child's transition. And of course, doesn't support them, getting gender affirming care either. And so what, that survey found was these kids who are not supported, and all trans people, in fact, according to that survey, 2 in 10 considered suicide, and 1 in 5 attempted suicide. Sorry, I think it was 2 in 5 considered suicide, and 1 in 10 attempted suicide. Sorry, as is what that survey found. So we're talking about life and death with these children. So it's not academic. It's not, hiding information. It's kids who are coming out most often and who aren't being supported and who are suffering, and in some cases attempting suicide or committing suicide over it. So it's a life and death issue for a lot of kids. And meanwhile, what and this again enrages me, and I'll try not to rant, but
Rant away, rant away.
Go
This show's
ahead.
for adults.
as recently as this past Christmas, with the fundraising tax deadlines coming up, Blaine Higgs was fundraising, sending out fundraising letters to his party, asking for support over parental rights. And there's actually a pledge of parental support that he signed, that he asked people to sign and send up to $3,000, which is the maximum for donations, along to him, so he can run for, help pay for his reelection coming up next year. So, we're not talking about parental rights. We're talking about fundraising. We're talking about politics. We're talking about using children who are vulnerable as a political tool to gain support from folks who are being misinformed by him intentionally. And, being placed in danger, my kids like my own who are stressed out about going to school because of all this garbage that keeps getting spread around by the government, not just the fringe, which is what we usually have to worry about, but the actual premier, one of the, people with one of the biggest platforms in Canada, is spreading lies intentionally about these trans kids and fundraising. Now, recently, and this is what came out on Friday, we found out that Higgs has engaged these infamous individuals internationally, who one is named James Cantor, who is Canadian actually, but testifies all over North America and the world against gender affirming care for minors. And he has brought them in to speak to the government here in New Brunswick. And that is, set off alarm bells for me, obviously, because, Higgs had talked about gender affirming care for trans kids in the legislature while the education bill was being debated. And it's like, why is he talking about gender affirming care, healthcare for trans kids in a debate over an education bill? Because it's not about the education bill, of course, right, is the answer. But, that set off an alarm for me, is like, Higgs is not only looking at their education, he's also started to look into their healthcare. And what we found out last week is, as he's had some of these discredited, infamous individuals who testify in anti-trans cases all over North America and the world come and present to members of his government. They won't say who they presented to, whether it was cabinet or caucus or the health department or whoever. But these are people who whose expertise has been used to deny healthcare to trans people. And if that happened to my child, of course, that would be devastating, to have their gender affirming care taken away until they were 18. My child just turned 15 late last year, and has just started down the road. This is another thing that he said last week, is that 60% of these children within their first medical appointment get a prescription for hormones. Nothing could be further from the truth. I don't know how long it takes you guys to see a specialist, but it can be up to 2 years here in New Brunswick. So from the first appointment, you go to see your family doctor and say, I think I'm trans. I'd like to see a specialist. From that starting point, it's 2 to 3 years to get in to see that endocrinologist who can help you. So it's not, nothing automatic. And that endocrinologist won't talk to you until you've had psychological counseling and can demonstrate that. And they talk to the counselor. It's not, anything that's automatic by any means. It is a very long, slow, and careful process where, the welfare of the child and the parents are involved throughout. However, now this is obviously being politicized by Higgs. And, is this intentional? Is this just spreading, again, fear, uncertainty, and doubt to promote his political reelection? or is this laying the foundation to take away health care from trans kids, which he can do? Another thing that happened while all this commotion was going on in the legislature last year, and all the 713 policies were being debated in the legislature, is there was a change to take away there is right now there's two medical corporations in New Brunswick, Horizon and Vitalite. One's French, one's English. They both reported to elected health boards until last year, and the health boards updated the government on how the hospitals were run. The argument Premier Hicks made was those hospitals, our healthcare is not performing the way it needs to because those hospitals and health corporations are accountable to the health boards and not to him. So that tied his hands. He couldn't get that kind of interference or administration, depending on your point of view, of the hospitals that he needed to get those efficiencies. So Higgs abolished and changed the Health Act in Brunswick to abolish those elected health boards and make the health corporations report to the minister and him directly. So effectively, if Higgs wanted to take away gender affirming care from trans children, he is completely legally able to now. He can send a
What a
directive
monster.
to the hospitals and say, stop giving gender affirming care to minors, and they would have to stop, and we would have to fight them in court to restore it. And I wouldn't say it's an automatic, sometimes courts don't go the way. I think it's a pretty clear-cut case they'd have to restore it. But in the meantime, think of all the trans kids who would be stranded without health care. Undoubtedly, some would take their lives, no question, if they couldn't have their gender affirming care. I have no doubt. I don't think most people have any doubt that would happen. But why else would these experts who testify in cases around the world for denying gender affirming care be presenting to government? It's not just about the education system and policy 713. So we're in a position now where we say, okay, he's telling lies about gender affirming healthcare or being so careless that he's misrepresenting it. That would be the most charitable way, I think, to put it, is maybe he's just wrong and doesn't know it. In any case, he's being careless, and I think it warrants another human rights complaint, to be honest, and that's something I'm going to be looking at this week, is filing another complaint with the Human Rights Commission over him spreading transphobic information about trans healthcare in New Brunswick.
Now, when we're talking quote unquote experts, I think we read it into the show last Friday. We're talking about people who have never treated or dealt with transgender healthcare at all, but they're somehow brought in as experts on the matter.
Yeah, I think what people have said is these people need to deny healthcare, you need to present some sort of credentialed person. And if you have a PhD, even though you're not a medical doctor like James Cantor does, the clinic he used to work at was shut down because it wasn't shown to be effective in treating anything. So they shut it down. Where they had talked about gender dysphoria and 2S-LGBTQIA children, and eventually they shut it down. And I think it was in Toronto, it was in Ontario, that and no longer was he able to practice as a psychologist. And now I think he makes his living, testifying in these trials for people who are interested in denying care to trans children. So recently, you mentioned Ohio. We know he's testified in Tennessee and Florida as well. So it's definitely setting off alarm bells for us here in New Brunswick. And this is, I would say, a bigger deal than Policy 713, because even
Oh
though,
yeah.
my child was completely supported by us,
You still wouldn't be able to get
Not
the
every
care.
child is.
right. I mean, if we would have to literally
Yeah.
move to go where we could, or set up an appointment or find another doctor at a province to, continue my child's gender affirming care, which, and so would every other New Brunswicker. So that who's a trans New Brunswicker who receives gender affirming care, who's under the age of majority. So it is a big deal, and it's very worrisome to hear that Higgs is lining up these widely discredited experts to testify to government. And yeah, I think what his aim is to provide enough of a foundation that his caucus has enough cover to say, well, if we heard from experts, and we have a lot of questions, so it's safer to just put a hold on this. And
So all of a sudden, when it comes to Cantor, it's not data my ass.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
How
Like the expert who wrote
convenient.
that. Well, like the expert who wrote that vaccines cause autism.
right.
That
Well,
expert, one of
these
those
are
guys, like a complete.
like I said, just Google the guy, and you can get the story on him. I don't have to spread it around. He's been widely discredited by many, and his views and his background and his credentials have been widely discredited on this topic. So I don't have to do the work myself. If you're interested, Google him, and it's very easy to find. So, but for some reason, New Brunswick, he's found a safe place. He's found a receptive audience, and we all know the reason. It's because of Premier Higgs.
Okay. Now, when we're talking
Yeah.
about this as well, we've got these experts who are not experts, especially in this field. But one of the ways this issue came to our attention was the claim at the beginning when he decided that he was going to revise Policy 713, which wasn't perfect in the first place, as you were mentioning, because it was already seeking permission for children who were under 16 to start with in its original form, saying that they had received about 150 letters from parents complaining about this. And then there was a Freedom of Information request. And then that turned out to be 3 letters. One of them,
3.
which apparently was talking about litter boxes. And then
Don't get me started.
apparently there were no letters at all later on that we found. So it was like, what, they just like sat down and wrote 3 when the FOIA request came in themselves, or had 3 friends write? Like, what the hell?
So it's important to remember this policy is for, it concerns 2S LGBTQIA plus students and supporting them, but also the parents of 2S LGBTQIA plus students. No documented evidence has ever been demonstrated any complaint from any parent of a 2S LGBTQIA plus student in New Brunswick complaining about Policy 713. And there have been extensive requests of the Education Department for months to produce this evidence, where they said hundreds and hundreds of complaints were received. It wasn't just 150. The education minister who replaced Cardy says hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails received. And I clipped that onto my TikTok. If people want to search for my TikTok, I have some of the video from the legislature where he makes these claims clipped. And then the request information requests go in, say, well, let's see these 100 of complaints. So like, we didn't even know there were that many parents of trans kids for there to be
Right.
hundreds.
Yeah.
Nothing. They came up with nothing. The ones that they provided to the Child and Youth Advocate for their report are ludicrous. They are just they talk about the litter boxes in the schools, of which there are none, of course. They talk about religious instruction in schools and how that's correct, which of course is ludicrous. They are just the least credible things that an external observer could read and base something on. But he just needed that crumb, right, to justify why he was doing this.
Of course.
And then, the folks who want to believe him will believe him. And he has doubled down. For some reason, he's backed off on things like French immersion and other changes he wanted to make. But for this, he is holding on with both hands. And I think it's because it's generating political support for him and donations that he badly needs, because he has been low in the poll for 2 years now, among the lowest in Canada.
You know where the whole litter box thing, you know where that comes from? The rumor was it was for kids who wanted to be furries.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
That was never the
I
case.
definitely know that. Yeah, and so this is what there was another infamous letter who was circulated that a constituent forwarded to a cabinet minister here in New Brunswick, saying there is 100% definitely litter boxes in schools, and I can prove it. And that letter was forwarded directly to the premier by this cabinet minister, saying, I 100% believe this constituent who tells me this. She is very credible. Of course, none of it happened. No. It was all ridiculous. It was immediately discredited, and the fact that it was taken seriously at all by this cabinet minister was the thing that ended up gaining attention. But again, here we are, just combating these ridiculous tropes that you think in 2023 and 2024 would just be dismissed out of hand. But unfortunately, they found a home within the Higgs government.
Well, there were schools in the United States that actually do have litter boxes in the classroom, but not for kids who think they're furries. It's for when they have a shooter lockdown drill, or there's an active shooter in the building and they lock everything down. Of course, what happens to children? They get frightened and they need to use a toilet. Well, they don't have one. So they put litter boxes in classrooms because of active shooters.
I didn't know that.
That's where that came from. And somebody said it's because they want to be furries. No, that's not the case. And again, in New Brunswick, there's absolutely no documented case of that whatsoever.
No, none.
But that's where it started. It was, they had litter boxes in classrooms, but it was not for children who thought they were cats or dogs. That was never the case. It was for a place to relieve oneself in an active shooter.
A minimum of dignity in a situation that's horrible.
Wow.
Yes, exactly.
Somebody said they saw kitty litter at a school and they used it to spread in the driveway to put on the ice. I mean,
because
and here we go. All of a sudden it's spun into this wild tale that, strains credibility on the best day, but somehow this has found a home as credible information within the Higgs government.
These are the Pizzagate group of folks, right? Who just seem to want to believe the most outlandish things, and they run with it, and now it gets written into policy. It's like,
so here we are now. We're on the lookout for why are all these discredited experts presenting to government, and why is Higgs spreading these lies about trans healthcare? And again, having made all these changes to the education system, or tried to, and still accomplished a minimum subset of what he intended, why are now all these purported experts in trans healthcare presenting to government? What's that agenda? And, is he laying the foundation for the notwithstanding clause be used like Mo did in Saskatchewan? Is he setting the table to take away the trans healthcare? We don't know. We do know, these are people who, under any credible, critical eye, would not be in any government presenting any information, and who have been widely discredited across the world. So, as not being experts in the thing they purport to have expertise in. So, again, it's very concerning, and it's got our attention now. And like I said, this I think would be devastating if we did take away the healthcare from trans children. It would definitely cost lives. Kids would die.
Oh, absolutely.
Now,
It would decimate families in the process.
Absolutely, and this has already divided families. Higgs's stance, because you start blowing these dog whistles, ramping up this misinformation, and people have told me, I was kind of okay with this. Now my kid definitely can't come out because my spouse believes what Higgs is saying, or my parents, who might be boomers, believe what Higgs is saying, right? And those folks grew up in a different time. And they don't really understand trans people, and now folks are being, Higgs has gone to them. And again, these aren't parents of trans children. These are just voters that Higgs has gone to say something bad is happening in school, and I need you to support me, because these irresponsible parents of trans kids are letting this happen to their children, and they shouldn't be. Which, again, it's not about the kids, it's not about the parents like me, it's about politics and transphobia.
how successful is this gambit so far that you can tell?
Well, it's successful enough that, Higgs claims, and again, this is confidential, and there is someone who has signed up supporters for the premier named Fatine Grzeski, who
Mm,
some of you might know. She's
mhm.
Christian. She has a background in the Christian nationalist movement in Canada. Through her efforts and others, claims to have signed up 3,000 supporters for Higgs, because Higgs' party actually rebelled. The Progressive Conservative, the Progressives, the Red Tories, rebelled against Higgs and said, "We want you to resign." People who I know my whole life, who have been Tories, lifelong Tories, said, "We want you to resign. You need to retire, and
Yeah.
we're leaving the party if you don't." And started the complicated review process to try to eject him as leader of the party. Those they came very close, but those requirements ultimately failed. They weren't met to put him under review. Rumor is it was just by one riding president short of the level to put him under review. But again, Higgs and Fatine and others claim to have signed up, 3,000 new members to come to his defense if he did get put under review. So, is that true? I don't know. I signed up to vote against him. But it's definitely possible that there was many hundreds who signed up to support him based on the misinformation they've been told. I don't know. So it has taken hold, and it is being promoted actively by Higgs and others in his government. So it hasn't gone away. It's only gotten worse, in my view.
Oh my,
This is not
this is
good.
not good at all.
Fatine is the furthest thing from a Christian to begin with. I mean, if Jesus Christ came down right now, she'd be the first one being outcast amongst, the entire Republican Party and most of the Conservative Party of Canada.
There's a podcast that I listen to and participate in here in New Brunswick, and these people actually had a background in charismatic Christianity, and had met Fatine in her old life and knew her when she was trying to run federally, and told stories. And she actually had her lawyer reach out to the podcast to get them to delete those episodes, or they would have been suffered legal consequences from her.
Our network's familiar with
Yeah, a
that.
slap suit.
It's 100%. That's what it was. So yeah, she's very carefully managing her image. But I tweeted last night about a book that she was featured in, where it talks about how she spent, I talked about what I was doing in 2008 when she was screaming into a microphone on Parliament Hill talking about erasing the line between church and state. So it's quite a difference. I was raised in my family here in New Brunswick and doing my workaday life, and she was in Parliament Hill lobbying against abortion rights and against gay marriage and all sorts of things. So she has a long history. The book on her is well known. Like I said, I think she's very aggressively trying to manage that past now because she is running in the provincial election that's upcoming this October or sooner. It might be this spring. But she's running as a candidate who is there's a lot of rumors how she became acclaimed, that she had pushed out some of the, or worked with Higgs and other organizers for the premier to push out other candidates who didn't support Higgs. And now she was acclaimed just before Christmas. So she's moving forward as quickly and as aggressively as she can to become an MLA, which is absolutely what we don't need, of course, with this politicization of these issues by Higgs.
Now,
well, the internet is forever.
Yes.
Yeah, thankfully. Yeah, and there's a lot of tape on her, speaking into a microphone against trans people in the past. It's not hard to find. So if people want to know the book on Faytine, it's there. Again, they just have to want to hear the information. If you're somebody who agrees with them, who's on that fringe, or who just generally supports Higgs, maybe you turn a blind eye or hold your nose, and that's really what I think we have to fight against. We can't let that just go unanswered. Faytine actually has run a website called Don't Delete Parents. Again, this whole trope that parents are being left out of this, when of course they never are. Under any version of the policy, have never been left out. But she runs a website called Don't Delete Parents, and the website says that parents are being left out, and these radicals are trying to exclude parents from their children's life. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. That's a farce. But it signs people up for the party, and it raises funds for the party and for her. She still runs a channel that's supported by donations. So she's making money off of this. The party's making money off of this. Meanwhile, the kids are put in the crosshairs.
Man. Talking about kids in the crosshairs, you mentioned earlier about kids that had considered suicide and that have attempted it. I have the additional concern of when it comes to homeless youth and statistics that I've seen. There's no firm statistics, but the best estimation is that about 40% of homeless street youth identify as rainbow.
Right.
And if you mentioned that there's about 78% of parents that weren't supporting things like even a name change.
Yes.
And those kids, let's say, get kicked out and end up on the street. There's more than a risk of suicide. There's risk of trafficking. There's risk of doing what you need to do to survive, which often leads to selling yourself, which can lead to addictions, which could lead. Is this being brought up? Is this being talked about in any way, shape, or form?
No, that's, again, the takes would say this is why parents need to be involved, because, and meanwhile, these kids, again, that survey I mentioned from 2019, 75% of family stop speaking to that person, 7% threatened with violence, 6% experienced violence, 7% kicked out of the house. So it's very, and that's just the trans statistics, and it's worse for people who are racialized. It's if you're from a community where this is less acceptable than other communities, then it's definitely the statistics show and the survey shows that it's more prevalent for those children. So it's definitely a problem. With the unhoused, I haven't seen the statistics you mentioned, but it's definitely, we know with trans kids and gender diverse kids in particular, it is a problem for sure.
Okay.
According to them, this is them telling a survey. This is, a statistically accurate survey. This is what happens to me. So it's not like people are making this up. This is according to the kids themselves.
Okay. Now, the other avenue talked about in this is that schools are hiding information or keeping things secret, and it's a point that I've made on the show. This seems to be, especially from a government that identifies as conservative, which is supposed to be about getting government out of your life. This seems like the state appropriating information that does not belong to them. Some of the most private personal information that can belong to a person, their gender identity, their sexual, like this, making it theirs and then doing what they will with it. So I'm looking at this as that schools are not keeping things secret. School boards are recognizing that this is information that does not belong to them and therefore are not touching it. So this information does not belong to you to either share or keep secret.
100%.
One way or the other.
Exactly. And Higgs actually said on September 20th, you probably remember the big nationwide protest against the anti-trans rally that wasn't supposed to be anti-trans, but I never saw so many anti-trans messages in my life as the ones I got that day. Higgs said on the lawn of the legislature in front of TV cameras that teachers were hiding information. Wow. I mean, imagine being a teacher hearing the premier accuse you of hiding information from their parent stakeholders that you're right. It doesn't belong to the school. It's the students' information. It's up to the students. I said on some of my tweets, it's not up to the government to give permission for kids to be gay. You don't, if the school finds out, it's okay. I mean, even in the existing policy 713, if you want to be part of a GSA, that's not disclosed either to parents, even in Higgs's version. So there is acknowledgement of these principles that that's private information to the child. And if we have to, boil this down to parental rights, let's talk about children's rights. What are the child's rights? If that child has capacity to say, and an older child would, 10 or older, let's say, to say, I think I might be trans, or I think I might be non-binary. That's the child's information. And if they tell that to the parents, if the child doesn't tell that to the parents, you have to say, why doesn't that child feel safe telling the parents? And if you ask that child, it'd say, I know, I kind of, I know my parents better than anyone, right? If I tell them I'm trans, it's not going to go well. So I think I'll just keep that to myself. And that staying in the closet is what causes that suffering with gender dysphoria. As that keeping that secret and having to live a lie and every day be misgendered, that just really takes a toll. As that child gets older and goes through puberty and their body becomes something that is they just feel is wrong on every level, and every time they look in the mirror they say, that's not me, I'm this is wrong, I feel awful about what I'm seeing in the mirror every time I look at it. Those kids, that's what causes the depression and the suicidal tendencies. And if they're at school and they're being misgendered in every interaction that happens every day, over time they're just going to start shutting. And we see this with kids here in New Brunswick. I'm sure it's with kids everywhere. They just start, maybe they don't go to school. Maybe they go drinking with their friends instead, because if they have friends, maybe they're socially isolated. Maybe they smoke drugs instead. Maybe they run away from home. They're definitely not going to be a successful, healthy, happy student, which is what the education department's job is, right? Is to make sure these kids come
Right.
out the other side as successful adults. And that's not what we're seeing, of course, in that case.
Is there, I mean, I know that there's some action, but the school boards have resisted up until now. Among the public, is there any action? Is there any movement to sort of bring this to attention, to counter this, to make this an issue? Are there people organizing?
Absolutely, there are people organizing. I think the general public, again, we have to be careful about giving this power to the general public, because the general public, a lot of them, human rights aren't something we run a poll on and say, okay, most people are okay with you having rights, so
Right.
you can have rights. You have them or you don't. So
Right.
kids have rights. The reason Higgs has appealed to the public, and especially people who are, might be of an age where this wasn't common and who don't understand it, or people who are actively transphobic or who have religious beliefs against this. Higgs has brought them all into the conversation to say, you need to have a say on the school policy. Keep in mind, they don't do this on every other school policy. They don't do this on the healthy food policy. They don't do this on the policy for students with AIDS. They don't do this on the hockey team and say everyone has to be okay with all the hockey team rules. But with trans kids, it's okay. Higgs has brought all these people in to comment on it because he was under attack by folks who were pushing back on him. So, I mean, yeah, there are folks who aren't sure about this, and this is where you have to have that grown-up conversation with people to say, here's what, I know you might not know any trans people or think you don't know them, but this is what this is what trans people are. They're not this trope that you learned 40 years ago in the back of the convenience store smoking with your friends. There's a community out there. There are core truths about these people that if you want to participate in this conversation, you need to understand. But of course, what Higgs is doing is exploiting that ignorance for his political benefit.
Of course he is. It's something you said earlier that makes one wonder when Higgs went on about how they get the treatment immediately. I'm like, it's not. Psychological treatment is the very first thing. A lot of counseling before a single drug is administered.
Yeah. So,
it's not like walking into the pharmacy and saying, "Give me some hormones." It doesn't work that way.
This is exactly how he made it sound. And if, I don't want to share too much of my child's private information, but, you start with a general practitioner, you get that referral to specialist, you get counseling. And if you haven't had counseling, that's the first thing the specialist will tell you is, you need to have a psychological assessment by a professional before we talk about these things. And then I want to talk to that professional. And then, and like my kid has been going to the gender affirming clinic. Again, it took 2 to 3 years to get into it, and they're in their second year there. They still they haven't received any hormone treatment yet. They're still going through the process. It's a long and very careful process to give a child gender affirming care. It's definitely not the slipshod, careless process that Higgs has promoted to the public.
And it's no different for adults either.
No,
it's the same process.
Exactly. And again, they're acting like trans people don't exist. Like this is just something that I hear a lot. This is something that's popular on social media, and kids just think this, but it's not true. I mean, there's trans people all over the world. I mean, you guys are the same age as me. How often did you hear that said about gay and lesbian people when we were kids, right?
Yep.
Like they said, "Oh, this will go away. They're not really gay. They just think they're gay." Exactly, right? And now it's the same thing with these trans kids. Oh, it's just a phase. They're just
It's
They
been a
just
lifelong
no.
phase here. So.
Right, right. Yeah, it's not just if trans people exist, they exist. And you still have to argue that basic fact with some people because of all the misinformation that's out there.
Because that keeps on
And I
reminding me
mean,
of that show Soap, where the Billy Crystal's character says, "Oh, I'm no longer a practicing homosexual." I'm like, I got it down by now.
well, I mean, to say it's a phase, Mr. Beaver could look at me and say, "Oh, Paul, you being a cis het man, that's just a phase, right?"
Oh,
Like,
it's
it's not how it
Yes, you
works.
just haven't
no,
met the right man yet.
exactly.
Yeah.
But these are the arguments they make, and of course, in the absence of any other argument being made, it resonates with these people who they
Mhm.
might have just put this on the back burner in their mind because there has been legislation that's legalized marriage for same-sex couples, for example, and some of that they don't have to think about that anymore because it's not in the news, and all of a sudden Higgs comes along and stirs up all these feelings that have been sitting there and they haven't thought about in a while, and no one talked them out of it. No one made that argument that this wasn't right. It's so these biases are still there,
Mhm.
and they're being mined by the foes of trans people and cynical political actors for political support and funding.
So,
Well, it makes me think of. Okay, go
no,
ahead.
no,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Mr. Beaver, please.
please.
I was just going to say, it makes me think of. So it's an anecdotal statement I'm about to lay down on you here, but I think what we're going to see over the course of time as people become emboldened by the dangerous rhetoric, and people are becoming emboldened on the other side of the rhetoric that Higgs is launching. They're like, you're going to harm people, and you're going to have folks who have been, in their mind, they're trans and have been their entire lives and kept it in the closet. And they're going to
100%.
explode. And here's where I'm going with this. Years ago, when during a presidential election, when George W. was first running, and you know how they do the New Hampshire primaries, and they go down to the diner and they interview people, and it was, I'll say it was Bob Dole. I can't remember if it was Bob Dole. Was there meeting people, and there was a gentleman who was in his 70s, and he sat down and talked with Bob Dole, and they had a back and forth, and he said, "Dole, well, how are you on same-sex marriage?" He goes, "No, I'm against it. Oh, marriage is between a man and a woman." He says, "We're done." And then the interviewer went, "What?" Here's this 70-year-old farmer who's retired for the most part, in New Hampshire. And he's like, "Well, why did you say that?" He goes, "Because I'm a gay man and he just denied my right to love." And I was like, and the interviewer was like, floored. But it was because he'd been pushed so far by so many people for so long that he just had it and exploded. And it was revelatory for everybody in the diner that day. It was like, "You mean this crusty old farmer over here is gay?" Yeah, guess what? They exist.
Everywhere,
Trans people
every
exist
walk of life.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Always
across the
have.
world. And it doesn't take long to find a trans person if you really want to. About 1%, 0.5%, 1% of the population is trans, according to some of the estimates I've seen. They're everywhere. Everywhere there's
Mhm,
trans people. It doesn't take long to find them. And go talk to them if you're one of these people who is really worried. If you're really worried enough that you're going to sit on Twitter and rant about this all day long, go talk to a trans person and
mhm,
just test your views with them, because it won't take long to dispel some of the myths that you've built your point of view around if you actually talk to a person who identifies as
mhm.
trans instead of just taking a political actor who's manipulating you, clearly, their word for
Clearly.
it. I mean, in any case, like I said, these are biases that I think we didn't deal with. They just got to sort of put on the back burner, and they're given new life by this debate here in New Brunswick, unfortunately.
With the
Well,
election,
it all leads back. Well, go ahead, sir.
sorry,
Go ahead.
with the election coming up, um, are there any parties or any politicians who are standing up, who are acting as allies, who are fighting this as well?
Yeah, we have. There is an NDP party. It's it's in rough shape these days. There's a leader, and they're planning to run candidates in the upcoming election. And they're on the left of the political spectrum here. There is a Green Party, which is little in better health, I would say. They have 3 elected MLAs. They're very supportive of trans people and have stood against the government since this issue came up. The major force here, we do have a provincial Liberal Party, and they have done the most substantial work standing up for trans kids. And the leader, Susan Holt, is running about neck and neck with Higgs right now in the polls. So it's, I heard you say there's possibility of a government, flipping here. Fingers crossed, right? But we
Right.
don't know. It's every poll says, every person I talk to is like, I am done with Higgs. That guy is, for any number of reasons, not just this, but a lot of different reasons. There's the unhoused, the healthcare, the education system apart from Policy 713. There's all sorts of issues. Guys, I'm not sure how closely you follow our news. Our provincial
Enough.
government is, here in New Brunswick, but is our provincial government in the past 3 years has banked 2.2 billion in surpluses. Again, for a small province, that's a huge surplus.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot. Meanwhile, we have an education system that is testing amongst the lowest in the country. We have unmet need in the healthcare system where people don't have physicians. People over Christmas, there was one waiting ER room in Fredericton that was at 360% capacity.
Oh my word.
And
Yeah.
one of the ER doctors said, took to Facebook and said, don't come here unless you're dying. Unless you're going to lose
Do
a
not
limb
come.
or your life, do not come. We have no room. Meanwhile, the government is sitting on literally billions of unspent dollars. Some of this has gone to reduce the debt, and some people say, well, that's a good thing. It's like, yeah, it is a good thing, but people are dying. We're at the bottom in schooling. That money is there to be spent. It's not there to go to bankers. So, if people
You
are
said 2.2 billion?
2.2 billion over the past 3 years, yeah, and just 1
That's an
billion.
astonishing amount of money for the province of New Brunswick.
It
It's an
is, isn't it?
astonishing amount.
Right.
And it's not even an amount of money we can really sort of grasp. Oh, 2.2 billion. The difference between 1 million seconds and 1 billion seconds. 1 million seconds is, I think, 6 days or 8 days. A billion seconds is 32 years.
Right.
So when you put that into monetary figures, it is an astronomical amount of money.
Exactly.
Especially in a province that's not even 1 million people. Like, my goodness.
Right.
That needs to be going directly into healthcare and education.
Well, it's not like everything's fine. And we're sitting on this money and say, okay, well, let's put that towards the debt. Things are the worst they've ever been. And Higgs is underfunding them deliberately because his belief as a fiscal conservative is you can't just throw money at problems. There's always going to be more. People are always going to want more. However, you can't just throw money at things. It's like, well, if you're at the last place, throw a little money. Maybe throw half of that at it and see what happens. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. I'm not there, but it's just an idea. Spend some of that money and see if it gets better. I don't know. Try something.
He just seems to be like a horrible human being all around.
This is the most, I'm trying to give both sides. This is, but this is what folks are saying about him here. There is a lot of unmet need right now, and it doesn't take long sitting on Twitter watching people talk about Higgs for folks to criticize him. There's a lot of, last over the weekend, actually, there was an unhoused person who was trying to stay warm. There's unhoused is people the worst it's ever been in New Brunswick, especially with the cost of living and the housing situation. We have had, housing is a more prized commodity here in New Brunswick than it's been in quite a while. And there's a lot of unhoused people, and a man who's just trying to keep warm, burned to death over the weekend. He had some propane going and lit himself on fire, and he died. And a few weeks ago, before Christmas, there was a man who was living outside, and he'd been doing some drugs, had a heart attack, and there's people dying outside who are experiencing issues, who have no place to go, while we're sitting on literally billions of dollars.
Then you've got the group of people who go, well, he shouldn't have been doing drugs. He died and it's his own fault. It's like, why don't you try living one day of his life and tell me you wouldn't be using drugs to try and get through the day too?
It doesn't even matter. People, you're right. People say that, if he had a place to go, we need to, as a province, as a society, have social supports for people experiencing homelessness, period. We can't have people dying outside in the winter in New Brunswick.
No, we've lost as a society if that happens.
Exactly.
And it does happen often. We have failed as a society.
Whether we have
failed,
$1 billion surplus or $1 billion deficit, we can't let that happen here in New Brunswick. That cannot happen. That shouldn't happen anywhere in Canada.
Anywhere.
As we keep on saying, kids, our premiers are the problem.
Yep.
Definitely.
They really
definitely here.
Sean, oh man.
Yeah, it's been a lot to take in, but my goodness gracious, you've been so kind and generous with your time, which we really thank you for.
So eloquent.
Eloquent and helping to enlighten both ourselves and our listeners and viewers. So thank you for that.
And substance, so much substance.
We'd love to have you back some other time too, if you'd be down with that.
I'd love to come back. Thank you for the opportunity. Like I said, I'm trying to spread the word far and wide about what's happening here in New Brunswick. It's, as I said, it's very concerning, and it's not on the right path. It seems to be getting worse, not better.
Well, if there are any developments like this, or if there's something that comes up at one point, you have something to say, please reach out to us. You have a home here. Like we said, we are going to pay a lot of attention to New Brunswick. We're going to try to get as many people from the province as we can on the show to talk about issues. We've reached out to Gail Costello as well.
Oh yeah, Gail's great. Love Gail. She knows twice as much as me about this, so she would be a great guest to have.
Yeah, we're just having trouble getting our schedules to coordinate. But and if you have any recommendations for people that we should have on, please
drop us a line.
Yeah, especially if the election happens to come early, because that wouldn't surprise me if he feels that the rug has been pulled out of under him. He might just go early to have less time for people to become aware. That seems to be a strategy.
Yeah, I'd say even money. It's going to happen. It's 50-50 right now. It's going to happen in the spring. Yeah.
Well, and as more and more people let's try and form a sentence here, Paul. As more and more parents across the province of New Brunswick who have children who are either gay or queer or trans or bi or whatever the case may be, are looking at what's happening to trans children and they go, my child could be next.
100%.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah, there was a survey actually, and I haven't looked into it, but someone brought it to my attention last week. It was done by the New Brunswick Health Council, and it was of the student population here in New Brunswick between grades 6 and 12, and 21% of them identified as 2S LGBTQIA+. Not necessarily trans, but
right.
But
rainbow, exactly. So this is something that could affect up to 20% of the kids in the province. So to your point, we need to pay attention to it.
Oh yeah.
Sean, I'm looking at the chat here. There's a lot of love for you. There's a lot of love for your family.
Thanks,
there's a lot of love for your child. I'm just floored. I'm
Yeah.
just floored.
Well, I think Higgs has been able to get away with it because New Brunswick is, and we understand it. We're a small province. We're not on everyone's radar. And I think he's getting away with things here that he wouldn't necessarily get away with in, say, Ontario or someplace with more scrutiny. And I think that's one reason they're doing it here, to be honest, is they're seeing what works. This is a testing ground for other markets. And there's Steve Outhouse is running the Premier's re-election campaign. He's someone who's worked with Danielle Smith out west and who's worked with the federal
Mhm.
Tories. I think they're seeing what works and what doesn't, and what resonates with folks here. And so I think we're the tip of the spear. I think we're the leading edge, and this is definitely going to start popping up elsewhere.
Oh yeah. No, I completely agree. You are the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
It's they're testing the waters in a smaller population area to see what they can get away with.
I agree.
And oh boy.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, we started this year off by saying 2024 is the year of pushback. The silent majority is not going to sit back and take the lies, misinformation, disinformation, and gaslighting anymore. We're building a community here that is going to push back and fight back for the dream that Canada is, and for the country that Canada can be, where we all have equality and equity and diversity.
And
We can get there. It's just so many of us have been quiet for so long, and that is changing.
Yeah.
Because the loud voices we hear, it's a very small percentage of the population.
And also, for viewers who are watching right now, later, who will hear it on the podcast, if you're from New Brunswick in particular, but elsewhere, if you happen to be from the trans community and you feel safe enough coming on the show, if you don't want to be visual on camera, we can make that. If you need to have your voice altered, we can do that as well. But if you want to, we would like to hear from you so that people can hear it from you.
Absolutely.
You have a home here as well. All right, just putting the call out there. All right, Sean, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for giving us so much substance and clearly speaking from the heart.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys.
Just
it's a
you have
pleasure.
our respect and you have our admiration and you definitely have our support.
Absolutely.
Greatly appreciate it. Thanks for helping me spread the word about what's happening in New Brunswick.
Anytime.
Anytime,
Right.
sir. You take
Have
care.
a Beaver-wific week.
As
Oh,
best you can.
man. Wow. Okay,
Well,
I thought we were just going to be talking about this issue, but that man is a mess. And I'm not talking about Sean. I'm talking about the Premier here.
No, hugs.
He's a
Yeah,
hot
no.
mess.
I know. And again, this is the tip of the spear, right? This is not. This is.
Well, here's the thing
from
when you
here
say
if we
tip of
do
the
not
spear,
push
right?
back.
Yeah. Here's the thing when you say tip of the spear. It's Mo invoked the notwithstanding clause, and Higgs isn't even doing that yet.
No, not yet.
Right? Is that something
Yet.
he's keeping in his back pocket? And I know that there are certain things when you go to the court, because I heard I saw a kid in the chat going like, "Where's the Supreme Court on this?" Well, the Supreme Court can't do anything on this until that case actually gets to it.
That's right. They
And
can't just dive in and take over. It's not how it works.
Yeah, it's not how it works. And and before that happens, it has to go through all the provincial courts and the regular court and then the Court of Appeal, and then it has to, and all the challenges and whatnot. So it'll take a while.
Oh yes.
This would take a while before it gets to the Supreme Court, and a lot of kids, a lot of adults, can be severely hurt in the meantime, and that is part of the plan. It's like, well, we might lose in the end, but think of all from their perspective. Think of all the good we'll do in the meantime, right?
Good.
It's just maybe from their perspective, right? Because like you said, with James Carville when he was talking. Like, these people believe in this with every fiber of their being. They actually think that they are fighting the good fight.
This
Not
is the
all of
scary
them.
part.
Some of them are just completely cynical, and they just think that this is the thing that will work.
Mhm.
And they just don't
Oh,
care
yeah.
who they hurt along the way. But those, they're almost worse. They are
Mhm.
worse.
Oh,
Because,
agreed.
but those who are simply really misguided, or just truly believe it in their hearts, they
They're
think
dangerous.
they're dangerous, yes, but they think they're literally doing the right
God's
thing.
work, man.
Literally.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow, wow. Oh my word. No wonder this guy is trying to grab onto this issue if he's such a disaster everywhere else. This is
No kidding.
literally the only thing he's got. He thinks this is his ticket.
Well, and like we said, Fatine, the internet is forever. Her past will be drudged up and put on blast, as the kids say. So we
I
can
am
let everybody know how much of a horrible human being she is and how she wants to rob you of your rights.
wow.
These folks want Gilead. They want to live the Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
It's not a joke. I'm not being hyperbolic. This is what they want.
But they don't realize, again, because the only people that pass the purity test are the testers.
That's it.
Yes. And eventually, when it comes to purity testers, there's another purity tester that comes along that says, hey, the guy who's doing the testing, he's not pure enough. Or she's not pure enough. I'm the real deal. And that's how we keep on taking yet another step to the right. I mean, look in Saskatchewan. Kit made the comment talking about Joseph Bourgault, who ran for the leadership of the Conservative Party. He's the one that's funding the Theo Fleury and Jamie Salé and all of that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And therefore, they formed a party to the right of the Saskatchewan Party because Mo, who invoked the notwithstanding clause against trans kids, is apparently not right enough for their liking. That is the problem with ideological politics. There is always an ideologue that will come along and say, hey, the current ideologue is not ideological enough. Always.
Always.
It's inherent to the system. It's in the DNA of ideology. I am more messianic than the Messiah. I am holier than the Pope. When the Pope made his decision, the Vatican announced the policy saying that gay people can be blessed, if not their unions. It's like, oh, it's time to excommunicate the Pope.
Yeah,
Seriously.
armchair quarterbacks saying stuff like that. I think it's hilarious considering whether you're religious or not, the Pope has kind of been studying what he does his entire life. I think he might know a little bit more and have a little bit more knowledge, skill set. Popes are well-educated individuals when it comes to religious doctrine, amongst other things. They usually speak several languages. They're similar to rabbis in that they study. Knowledge is, power. So, yeah, it's funny when you got an armchair quarterback making a comment like that. We need to excommunicate the Pope because he said something I don't like. I think he might know a little bit more than you.
But data my
Whether
ass.
you're religious or not. Yeah, data my ass. Yeah. Until the data suits his ass, right?
Right. Oh, then they wear it like a pair of depends.
Right where I was going, sir.
Wow. I am you know what? This is weird because I'm so rarely speechless, and I have been speechless so much on this damn show that I'm on lately.
I don't find myself speechless very, very often, and I'm not in this moment. I'm still incensed. I'm still angry. The anger I expressed on Friday was genuine, and I'm trying to reel it in a little bit so I can have a good day because it's a working day, and I have things that need to get done today, so I don't want to get too riled up about it. But keep your anger simmering just below the surface, because this deserves your anger. This deserves your disdain. This deserves your words that cut deep. Because this is a man who is denying health care to children because he doesn't agree with the way they want to live their lives.
He hasn't yet, but he's definitely.
He's going to. If he can, he will.
He's feeling it up with both hands.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my
You're
Lord.
right. He hasn't done it yet, but give him the opportunity, he'll do it.
Oh, yeah. Wow. The kits here have particularly liked this episode here. We got Kit Cassie going. This little podcast has first-rate interviews. Well done, lads. Thank you. Thank you so much. Kit Saucy, another excellent guest. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. We try to bring some humor to the politics, but when we have guests like Neely Kaplan-Mirth and Sean, when we're talking about people's lives and we're beyond the fire hose of bullshit now. We're like the fire hose of hate and oppression.
Mm-hmm.
There are very few jokes to make, and we're thankful and we're glad that you stay with us through this portion of what it is that we do as well. We talk about serious subjects, but we try to make them digestible and approachable by throwing in some humor. I have my tiara and I'll sing little songs, and I've got my facial expressions and stuff and throw in a joke, but that you stay with us when we have something that's heavier means a lot to us as well. We got Kitabi G going. What a great show. Thank you all. Kit Cassie, again, thank you, Sean, for sharing, and best to your family. Thank you, kids, for being open to us when we have something like this to present to you. It means a lot to us. Myself, totally self-serving comment, but as a rainbow person myself, who believes that even our own community have done disservice to the trans community by, earlier when we had same-sex marriage and rights, taking ours and being okay with leaving them behind. Even we have to look inwards, and we ourselves have some work to do. So,
I'm just listening and agreeing. I'm not part of that conversation, right?
So, again, thank you. We're dedicating shows, and we're dedicating topics to people who identify as 1% of the population, right? And so it's like
they need a bigger voice. They need a bigger platform, and if we can help provide that, damn it, we're going to do it.
Yes, but it's not like why are we talking about them again? Why are we talking? There can be that. It's because, and as Mr. Grizzly mentioned, who's next?
Who's next? That's what it boils down to. Who is next? They started in the U.S. with Roe v. Wade, and now states are talking about taking away contraception altogether. Then they'll end gay marriage. Let me rephrase that. Then they'll end same-sex marriage. And then they will outlaw trans people. And then they will round them up.
And that if they do that, at some point they're going to come for interracial marriage and interfaith marriage. And
I'm not being hyperbolic.
There is no limit.
This has happened before. It's happened before.
There is no limit. For the purest of the absolute pure, there is no limit.
That's right.
All right, kids and cubs. Whew. That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us, because we love making this to you, particularly even though the subject is hard, it matters to us. So we do love making this for you. Sharing is caring, so please, please, please share this with your peeps and poops. If you have anybody who needs a little bit of education, who needs some education, if you know people who are good people, decent people who just may be in the dark and need
Mhm.
to hear it from the parent of a trans child. Okay? Make sure that they hear about this. I see what you did there, Mr. Grizzly. Kid Dan, Paul has to go change his shirt. Great show. Because for those listening at home, Mr. Grizzly is wearing an Ottawa Senators jersey, and I believe Kid Dan is a big Toronto Maple Leafs fan. So,
Yes.
sharing is caring. So please share this episode with people that you know. And again, I'm reiterating it. If you happen to be from the trans community, if you're New Brunswick in particular, but anywhere in Canada, and you would like to come on the show, please, we do want to hear from you.
I've had a few colleagues that I've asked if they would be interested, and they're kind of like, I'm like, no, I'm like, no pressure. I just thought I'd ask if you'd like to come and talk. If you don't want to, completely fine. And I didn't even get to offer the anonymity aspect. They're like, no, I just want to. I'm like, oh, no, no issue. No issue. I don't want to put you on the spot. I just was hoping to have somebody from the community be able to share what, what it was like for them growing up, what it was like for them, how they felt. And because many people don't understand.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't when I was much younger. I didn't understand.
Eventually, there will be someone.
Well, and it's like our guest said, when you were younger, you were out in the back and you'd hear the rumors from the older fellas in your group, and you would believe them because why would they lie to me? They're older, they're more, and you were a young teenager.
Oh, yeah.
And you would believe them that they were just these weird perverts. It's like, no, that's not what it is. You have to learn. And if you open up your mind, you can learn. So,
and your heart.
Mind and heart, yes. But if we can get the mind open first,
yep,
then the heart will follow.
Yes. We are all people.
First. Period.
You can just deal on it on a basis of pure humanity. If you were in those shoes, if you were in those heels, how would you like to be treated? And then do that.
You need to be able to put yourself in that position, like you said.
It's really not hard.
How, it's not that difficult. What if it was me? That question doesn't get asked often enough. And that was one of the things that sort of changed my perspective on a lot of things, along with some members of my peer group who said, Paul, that's a lie. This is, I wasn't always this guy. 30 years ago, I was a different person than I am today. 30 years ago, I was 25 and didn't know a damn thing about anything. But I learned because I opened up my mind and I was willing to listen. And as I got older, I've learned and experienced. And it's like, no, I need to put this to work to fight for those who don't have a voice.
Yeah.
Well, I have to do it.
Yeah. We all have to do. Remember, we're one Canada.
Yeah.
We all have a part to play. Whew. If you would like to subscribe and make sure you do not miss an episode, you do not have to, thanks to the Ray Girl. You go to our pod page, that's podpage.com/thetruenortheagerbeaver, lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. Or you could scan the QR code that has just appeared under my chin if you're watching live. If you want to subscribe in other ways, we have the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page. You go there. We have 3 buttons for you. Make like Kit Elaine and smash, smash, and smash. Like, share, subscribe, which are our 3 favorite words other than Mr. Grizzly. Take it away.
Free beer today.
And you can help us with some free beer today by scanning that QR code by Mr. Grizzly's head if you're watching live, or if you are listening, going to our coffee page. That's coffee, spelled ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, lowercase letters, all in one word. And that is where you will find the Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund, where you can make a small donation to keep us, well, since Jen is here today, moist. Because we love speaking moistly to you. And thank you so very much to Kit Sherrill, who gave us our first tip of the year.
Oh,
Thank you very much. Did that on the 5th. Said, your show gives me hope we can make positive changes.
We can. Together we can make positive changes.
Together we can.
We can't do it on our own. We need your help. We need your help to spread. And again, sure, it's self-serving. Yeah. We're trying to earn money at this. All we've been doing is putting money into it. So it's self-serving to say, please like, share, and subscribe. I get that. But we're building a community. And to do so costs money. We need your help.
Yep.
It's as simple as that.
Many hands make light work, and now we're not only building a community, because what's going on with Cryer and the slap suit and the extra $25,000 Cryer's trying to raise to try to bring out, to mount some effort. We're now trying to build a movement.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you were here first. Those of you who've been watching this show like this, you are the foundation of this movement that we're building. When I started this 12 years ago, when I was with a group informally called Canadians Rallying to Unseat Stephen Harper, we were getting to a point where we were going to start to try to fundraise to try and buy some billboard space.
Mm-hmm.
And things kind of fell apart. And then I started the blog, and I was really hoping that over those 10 years that somebody would like my writing, and that I would be where David Mosscrop is now, or Evan Scribshaw. And that didn't happen. And then this came along, and maybe this is the avenue through which it happens. But when I say democracy is something that you do, that's not a joke. It's not just a tagline. It's something I believe deep in my core.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And I've seen it happen, being a member of the gay community, seeing what happened through the HIV movement, yes, and how people gathered, and how visibility at all costs, at any cost, became a credo of our community. Because if you were HIV positive back then, is that you broke out in Kaposi's sarcoma, you couldn't hide anymore. People could tell.
Yeah, they knew right away.
So we had to come out.
Yeah.
We
could not keep it under the radar
anymore. We couldn't pass anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, and look where we've come.
Mm-hmm.
In a short time, historically.
A very short time.
A very short time.
When you think about it, yeah.
It is possible. But it takes good people deciding, you know what? I may not be the expert in this. I may not know enough yet to participate in this discussion, and maybe not say something that's awkward or wrong, but I know my heart, and I can tell right from wrong, and this is wrong, and it's wrong enough for me to get up and do something about it. That's what you guys do when you listen to our show. That's what you guys do when you donate to us. That's what you guys do when you tell your friends, when you share, when you retweet, when you retweet something and say, hey, you need to watch these guys, and you add something of yourself to it. Every action like that is something that you're doing. It's a brick that you are laying down.
Yes.
So it really, really does matter. And every single one of you has something to contribute. Even if you think you don't, trust me, you do.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So I'm going to leave that as my democracy is something that you do statement. Of course, the usual stuff, go get your shots and write your letters and all of that stuff. But, just do the work. Just do the work of democracy. Right? Vote and care about things bigger than yourself. And trust me, you will be there. You'll learn the jargon eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Don't let
Rome
the
wasn't
things
built
you
in a
can't
day.
do stop you from doing the things you can. Don't let the things you don't know stop you from acting on the things you do. If you know something's wrong, take action.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So yes, we did the coffee. We did everything like that. We did democracy, something that you do. So, Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom?
You know, today has been a heavy, heavy show, right? There's no question about that. It's, but it's a show that is important and one that we need to, again, self-serving, spread the word, of course, but you need to consider that who's next? Who is next? They're going after trans children. They'll go after trans adults next. Then they'll go after the entire rainbow community and pick you off one by one by one. Eventually, they'll come for me because I'm a supporter of all of those folks.
And your whiteness will not save you from what they have in store for you.
No, it won't. That's how it works. Eventually, they will come for me. I know this. They will come for me because you supported those. I'm like, yeah, I did, because they're human beings who have a right to exist and live. And why can't we try and give them a shot at having a better life? So, stand up for those who can't stand up. Make your voice heard for those who cannot speak. Don't take over, but just be there to support and raise your voice when asked. And that's what it boils down to, my friends.
Absolutely. All right, Mr. Grizzly, please roll them credits.
I will get on that right away, sir.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver media podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Kids, I don't have a particular Easter egg for you, but again, exactly. Yeah, you put it right up there, Mr. Grizzly. Just some more comments. Kit Janet, I'm not sure I have seen your name on our chat before. This might be a first
Janet's
one.
joined from time to time.
Okay.
She's a friend.
All right.
Yeah.
So
she was a roommate, actually, for a short time period.
Oh, there you go. Well, hello. But please read the comment, Mr. Grizzly.
My daughter has been excluded from family events because of who she is. We were uninvited from a wedding. Bridezilla was mad she'd definitely outshine her. The latest, we were uninvited Christmas Eve. It's horrible and disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've not met Janet's daughter, but I have heard Janet's daughter's music on Spotify. And Janet, if you could send me the link, I'll post it again for folks. Some brilliant music, brilliant artist, and a beautiful woman. Like just a shining example of what your child can be when you as a parent love them and support them.
Yep. We have Kit Miss Sadeka here. They've already come for me. I've been called a traitor and child abuser, and even pedophile for supporting trans kids. There's Kit Cassie, everyone you can stand up. Brandon, Manitoba kept reformers off the school board and we kept them out of provincial government. Don't give up. There's lots of examples. So yes, please do. And a little bit on the happier, I guess, side for Easter egg, because I'm a big tennis fan. Qualifications for the Australian Open are starting. We have 4 Canadian women in the qualifying round and a Canadian man. So let's cheer for them and hope that things go well there. All right, kids, cubs, have a most beaverific day. Much love.
Bye.